So you've mentioned it a few times now, but you had this third project that came out, I think a year or two ago when the web animation API started to gain traction, what you've been calling WAPI. So when I saw that come out, I was like, oh, there is no more Framer Motion anymore. We can just use the browser, but that didn't seem to quite be the case. So what was the goal with Motion 1?
Yeah, Motion 1 was like an experiment, essentially. So both of the times I've ended up writing these animation libraries, I wanted to write a book. So it started with Pop Motion. I was trying to write a book about UI animation, and I ended up just writing the library. Likewise with Motion 1, I think I wanted to write about browser APIs and stuff. I was kind of putting my head into, I'd kind of written them off because I seem to remember feeling like WAPI had all these hard edges and rough sides to it. So I never really put my head into it much. And then at one point I was like, it would be cool to be able to fire off these hardware accelerated animations from, but then I'd be like, but it doesn't support springs, so what's the point? Blah, blah. And I'd sort of lead myself into that mental space. So I started checking it out, and I started by calling it like Motion Concept C. And that was like my third. So I had the imperative JavaScript library, the declarative pose and frame motion. And this is like my new concept where it was like a hybrid, like not even a hybrid at the time. When I first started, it was just like, how much can we get out of WAPI for the minimum amount of file size? So things like just even simple things like default values. If I say width : 200, that should animate 200 pixels because everyone knows that the default value of width is 200 pixels, like is pixels. It's not, there isn't a default unit value. So you have to say to WAPI 200 pixel string. It just feels, little things like that really bug me. The fact that you can't interrupt an animation, and the fact that you can't really stop one nicely. So you've got to wrap all these things. It doesn't accept easing functions. So now it dynamically generates linear CSS easing functions on the fly. Same as Spring. If the browser supports it, it will use the linear easing, and if it doesn't, it will pre-generate keyframes. So it does a bunch of stuff under the hood. And now we're at a point where, so that was Motion 1. It was a side project, and at the time I was kind of like working 16 hours a day. I didn't have a kid at that point, so it was the sort of thing that you could do. But I'd go home and I'd work on this side project, and at one point I got really blazed and drank a lot of whiskey, and I just realized I'm kind of wasting my time. Like I should be having more fun, like I was until recently. Like in my free time, like work should be work, and so from then on I didn't really touch it for a while. But over time, because obviously Frame Motion was my day job, a lot of these innovations would creep their way into Frame Motion. So you ended up with the hybrid engine where you kept the JavaScript engine, but just for a couple of kilobytes, you also had this fast path when you could get it. Now it's got like a mini version of the animate function, which is just like 2.5 kilobytes. The in view and all the scroll animations that all came out of Motion 1, and then they got improved in Frame Motion, but never really made it back to Motion 1. So that's why Motion now, I'm sort of launching the JavaScript API, the vanilla API, and it's now got all of those innovations that made it to Frame Motion, but never made it to Motion 1. But yeah, that's basically what it was. It was an experiment that went too far, and I really enjoyed making it, but I just don't think it was a healthy, like, I'm not getting any younger. I don't need to do that.
It'll be interesting to dig into in our next topic, because it does sound like you're going to go hard mode here. But before that, taking a library like Framer Motion, which is like mostly React centric, and you talked about doing a lot of more sort of vanilla stuff in Motion 1, and then rolling this all up together to release a library that will be not just React centric, have a good first class React experience, but like be more general usable. That's a really hard design problem, because like how you think about animations in React is very different than how you think about animations in a lot of other frameworks and stuff. So how are you, like, what challenges have you faced, and like how are you making these paradigms work together?
Luckily, I don't want to say, essentially, this sounds Machiavellian. I didn't plan for this in the sense that I knew this was going to happen, but I wrote everything with the consideration that at some point this might be broken out into internals. So everything in Frame Motion was kind of already it wasn't tied to, it was abstracted from React as far as possible. So most things, everything, not enough, but a lot of things are encapsulated away from React. I think it would be easy because and it's happened like naturally a bit, because when I launched Frame Motion 3D for for React 3 Fiber, that required certain abstractions. Likewise, the fact that you can lazy load all of the animation functionality, that required certain abstractions. And likewise, the history of it incorporating pop motion originally as an external dependency, but then later with Motion One as an external dependency, and having all of that folded back in at some point, the architecture just lended itself. So when I wanted to do certain things, like release certain things as a framework-agnostic API, it was really about exposing them in a way that, and actually most of the hard bit was just making sure that React wasn't included in the final bundle. Like that was actually like, and it will always be types. Like I've imported a type that imports a type from React, and I'm still like in the process of unpicking all that a little bit, and I've been independent now for 6 working days, so I should give myself a break, but I sort of feel a bit bad that I've gone so hard on the business side of things, and I haven't really taken, I was excited about was like getting to the library and doing all of that, and so there's certain things that I need to tidy up. Essentially, I make sure that the DOM stuff lives over here, the React stuff lives in here, and they'll never, and they're all ordered in the right way and encapsulated. Like Motion One used to be really good at this, like it was, everything had its own package. I don't want to go too far into that again, but at least separate the DOM stuff, JavaScript stuff, and React stuff, like have the renderers split to some sensible level. And I want to do it in a way that you can like just install Motion, and then everything beyond that. So like if you want Motion for React, then you just, it is Motion/React. And when I start mixing frameworks, that's going to be an interesting problem to solve. But I just like the aesthetics of it, which sounds shallow, but I actually think it changes. Like even the Motion, like you don't want a scoped package. That I really feel like that's just a bias, but I feel like the aesthetics of importing from a scope package and things like that, they don't sit right with me. So I'm going to put an inordinate amount of work into making sure that you can just import everything from a sub entry point.
That's going to be quite the challenge when it comes to types. I was thinking when you were talking like, oh yeah, you just have 2 packages, but like optional peer dependencies for all the different frameworks. It's gonna be a rough one.
Yeah, and it might be even impossible. I don't know yet, but that's the sort of thing that I'll at least give it a shot, because I really value it and want that in my own usage day to day.
Yeah, you've done a good job with the API. I was flipping through the docs today in the vanilla version, and I was like, oh, this looks just like I would expect it to. A lot of the times when I see a vanilla API for some JavaScript library, and vanilla API is like daunting, but this was like nice and approachable.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, and it's nice that I haven't moved. There's certain things that I want to bring into the vanilla that will probably make it feel a little more daunting, like motion values. There's no reason why they'd live in React land. Like a few things like gesture handles. It's nice that there's only a few exports. I think that's also what makes it feel approachable. But like for instance, I want to write this would be a quick one, but we've got the hover gesture, which sounds like easy, like mouse. Surely it's just a mouse over, but it does certain like pointer filtering and a few other things. And there's a certain pattern I want all of these things to adhere to. And it'd be nice to rewrite like just that one and have that as a hover. The menu will fill out and it will look a bit more robust, but hopefully the functions themselves will always feel simple and intuitive to use. That's what I'm going for, at least. Yeah. And then I get to dog food it in the React version. That's the other nice thing. When I rewrite these things, I give it to the JavaScript API, but before that gets published, I'm going to rewrite how it's implemented in React using this API. And if I hit any, boundaries or something, then that gives me a chance to make sure they're fixed, essentially.